Welcome to the train station. All aboard or all are bored?
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the train station. Today we are incredibly honored to be joined by Dennis King, the 33rd Premier of Prince Edward Island since May 2019. This is our first outside episode, so really excited to be here.
Yeah,
and
incredibly honored.
Yeah, incredibly honored to be in this wicked office. Whenever we walked in here, all of us were really surprised.
Yeah.
But Dennis King's remarkable path started in journalism with the Eastern Graphic, quickly rising to editor positions at Island Farmer and Atlantic Fishing Farming, where his work was honored with numerous awards. His career took a significant turn towards government service as the Director of Communications for Premier Pat Binns, depending his understanding of government operations and their impact on the lives of Islanders. Dennis's professional journey continued to evolve as he assumed key roles with the Mi'kmaq Confederacy of Prince Edward Island and the PEI Seafood Processors Association. He later established his own communications firm and worked in coherence with M5, providing strategic counsel to a diverse client base. As Premier, Dennis has skillfully led the province through challenges like severe hurricanes, cyber attacks, international trade disputes, and a global pandemic. His proactive, inclusive approach has not only mitigated impacts but also fostered a strong recovery, earning him respect and admiration across PEI. Thank you, Premier King, for taking the time out of your incredibly busy schedule to be here with us today. We understand the multitude of responsibilities you are juggling, especially as you prepare for the upcoming session in the legislature. It is an honor to have you with us, and we are immensely excited for today's discussion.
Well, look, it's a great honor for me to be here, and this is the highlight of my day, believe it or not. So. We've been dealing with a lot of heavy stuff in here over the last little while, but really, really excited to have you in here, and very honored that this would be the first train station podcast outside of the confines of Three Oaks, and what a better spot to have it here. Pretty cool office, eh?
Yeah, not to kind of reiterate what Ethan's point was, but we're incredibly grateful to be here today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, and I know I do understand our time constraints, so with that, without further ado, I'm going to probably initiate our first question. But before stepping into your role as Premier, you were celebrated as one of the foretellers, a group renowned for storytelling across PEI, showcasing a profound connection with narrative and the art of engaging an audience. Could you share your experiences with this transition on both a personal and professional level? How has your storytelling background influenced your approach to governance, especially in terms of listening to, understanding, and acting upon diverse narratives of all Islanders? Because you essentially stepped in from a role from being the one who's telling the stories to being an individual who's listening to everybody's stories and all their concerns and trying to benefit the community as a whole through those stories.
Absolutely, and look, I think they go hand in hand to everyday life, and certainly being a storyteller, I think, has helped introduce me to the importance of to be a good storyteller. You have to have a good ear to listen to a good story, and then have the ability to reiterate it. So, I think one of the most important aspects where there would be crossover from my previous life to now is just as you talk about that importance to listen, to be a good listener, to understand that the way you see things isn't always the way others see things, and others react to government policy or decisions different than I would assume they would when we make them. So to have a good ear has been really, really important for me, to be a good listener. Islanders, as you know, as you three can attest here, are very politically engaged on a very regular basis, and that's a really, really good thing in general. But it also makes my job a little bit more, harder, I suppose, on a regular basis, because not only do they have a political engagement, our place is small enough where people can stop the Premier in the rink or in the grocery store and share their thoughts. And I generally, quite honestly, I think that's probably my favorite part of the job. And my dad was a good storyteller. My uncles were good storytellers, and I'm able to, I hope, use that communication skill that I've learned and inherited from them to make my job better so Islanders understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. I hope it's served me well. I never thought for a second, I'm not going to lie to you, that being on the stage with the foretellers telling a bunch of silly stories about silly things in your life would leverage me or springboard me to this chair, but so be it. And maybe we brought a few laughs to Islanders along the way, and that's never a bad thing either, particularly what we've seen over the last 5 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah. To jump into our next question, in your experience as Premier of PEI and a leader, especially with the Progressive Conservative Party at PEI, how do you see the ideological, and the policies approaching varying between the provincial PC and versus federal and federal Conservative Party? And what are the key differences and some of the similarities in how each address relevant issues in Canada?
Yeah. Look, a really, really interesting question and a whole lot to unpack in that question.
Yeah,
because first and foremost, as a progressive conservative, my venture into politics and into the Progressive Conservative Party came through Pat Binns, who I think was a progressive person, a very progressive conservative, socially minded, fiscally responsible, environmentally sensitive, and I'd say Brian Mulroney before him would be my entry into that. I think the federal party is much different now. It's probably a little bit more ideologically to the right of the spectrum, as you are probably learning in your political classes. In PEI, we all tend to kind of skate down the middle part of politics. I don't think anyone really... Politics in PEI, quite honestly, is probably more about tradition and history as opposed it is to ideology. But that said, I think most Islanders are... I would think they care about their neighbours. They care about others. So they're socially progressive. If they see somebody struggling, it's their tendency to reach out to help. We've tried to do that at the same time, be fiscally responsible. We've delivered 5 budgets in PEI, and 4 of them have ended up in surplus, which is probably some kind of small record here. In PEI in general.
Congrats.
So I think my bona fides as a conservative are rooted in that. But we're trying to roll back taxes to leave more money in your pocket, which would be a conservative type principle. But we've also been Canadian leaders in net zero, trying to get to net zero faster and be environmentally responsible. So, are we? There would be a lot of Islanders who vote for me who will vote for Pierre Poilievre, for sure. But while there's similarities in some of the things we do, I'd say they're more philosophically to the right of the spectrum than me. And one fact that you may not know, and all of your viewers may not know, we're the only political party in the province where you need to have a membership in the provincial party and then have a separate one for the federal party. Every other party, if you're a member of the Green Party, for example, in PEI, you're a national member of the party. We're the only party where you need 2 memberships. So there is that disconnect that we have with the federal party. But there are many similarities, and we. But my philosophy is, I try to work with everybody. I don't care much about the color of politics. I like to try to get some things done. So
Very nice.
These young gentlemen kind of bring me along since I'm the oldest guy in the group, right? I asked that question one time too to Gail Shea when she was a cabinet minister, and she said she really found a profound difference when she got to Parliament, in terms of the ideological difference, right? But on PEI, and that you had mentioned, we tend to, there's a lot of similarities, right, among the parties, and then even going back in the days when we had 2 members per riding, right, and you would have actually some people vote one party for one candidate,
Absolutely.
and another party for another candidate, and it was just okay, how do you explain this, right? But
it's very, very true, and I grew up in Fifth Kings where, for many years Lowell Johnson was a PC member and Arthur MacDonald was a Liberal member, and it didn't matter if it was, Angus MacLean was the Premier or Jim Lee was the Premier or Joe Gibbs was the Premier. We kind of felt comfortable sending both of them there because they were good people. But, I tend to use I've used this many times, in PEI, we're very good with our service organizations. So whether you're Rotary, or pick a group, it's basically a collection of islanders who get there. They might have different religions, they might have different political bents, but they walk in the room, they put all of that aside, and they work toward trying to do the best they can for the people they're there to serve. And I've always viewed the legislature as that way. Yes, I'm a progressive conservative. Yes, Carla Bernard is a Green Party. We'll have the cut and thrust of question period like they do everywhere else. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I don't think because she's a different member of my party that she's trying to cheer against the success of PEI or vice versa. And I want to work with them to incorporate any good ideas that we can. And I think we've been good at that. I think anywhere I've spoken in the rest of the country and I talk about how we do things here, people come up to me afterwards and go, oh gosh, I wish you were the Premier of Ontario, or I wish you were. I'm not sure it would work as well there because they're so big, but it's a kind of a special thing that we have here. And even the cut and thrust of our question period is probably pretty tame compared to what you see elsewhere.
I would imagine. Isaac, next question.
Oh, sure. You kind of talked a little bit about the legislature too in your previous response, and this kind of ties hand in hand with that in some sense. But following each provincial election on PEI, the party forming the government must establish a cabinet. And could you elaborate on the roles and the responsibilities of the cabinet within the government structure, and how do you actually go about selecting and assembling a cabinet, and what criteria or considerations are typically taken into account?
Yeah, that is a very complicated process, to be quite honest. It's when we took over government in 2019, we had a minority government for the first time. And we had talked quite openly and honestly about trying to have members of other parties in the provincial cabinet, and that just kind of proved to be a little bit cumbersome for our Westminster style of governing. But I was genuine in my belief that we could operate a more of a consensus style government. We weren't able to achieve that. But so when you go about creating a cabinet, you look at many things. From my perspective, first of all, we had 12 people in the cabinet, or in the government, including me. And a small cabinet in PEI is usually 8 or 9, so we didn't have the ability to weed out too many. But the second time through a year ago, first and foremost, you look at talent and ability. You try, if you can, to match some people's skill sets with some particular departments. I look at a variety of different things, but you always have to take into play gender and geography come into play as well, because you want to make sure the cabinet is as representative as you can possibly have to the people you're representing. So, we have put the most women in cabinet in our history, which is a great thing, for sure. But I'd like to think, working with those individuals every day, they bring unique skill sets to the table, which I constantly monitor. I kind of view myself as the hockey coach, and I'm looking at, yes, the team is doing well, but the coach is usually the critic. While the fans are saying everything is going great, the coach is here and saying, this guy's not really picking up the slack where he needs to be. And so I constantly kind of look at that on a very regular basis. And I've been very honest with all of the people who have served in my cabinet that I would like to give them and others the ability. I don't want somebody just to be the Minister of Finance for 8 years, for example. I'd like to move them around and give them various levels of responsibility, and to also create space for others who aren't in cabinet to get in, to have a fresh perspective to do so. So we try to rotate that all the time, and find the balance is difficult. There's a lot of personalities involved, I'm not going to lie. I've had to inform a couple of people along the way that were in cabinet that I was removing them from cabinet, and it's not always a fun and comfortable conversation to have, but but that's part of the process as well. And it's like life, one person you're making unhappy, but someone else is really happy that they're getting the opportunity to go in. But overall, you just try to deliver the best team you can that can deliver for Islanders, but I evaluate it every second of the day, honest to God.
That's really fascinating, and
I really like that response. Very good. Thank you.
And because it's an integral part of our democratic, of the Westminster model, right? Mm-hmm. The creation of a cabinet, and then a weekly meeting, and everything is, so it's kind of an integral part of how our government is structured. Yeah, and look, I mean, you sit down, and each minister is responsible for that ministry, but we sit around the table like we did today, and we're talking about big issues like healthcare, or housing, immigration,
and I'm getting input from others, not just the housing minister on housing, but I'm getting input from the Minister of Education, for example, of what she thinks from her perspective, through her department, through the people she serves, and what ideas we can share with one another. And it kind of becomes a more organic process through the way of trying to work yourself through these very, very complex issues that don't have very many simple solutions. I mean, we need immigration in our province to make sure we're continually growing. It drives the economy, it helps with our labor force, but our growing population is also creating tension in housing. It's creating challenges within our healthcare system, within our schools, and others. So we're constantly trying to find the balance. How do you continue to grow but not grow too fast? We're not radical racists that we don't want people to come here, but at the same time, we need to make sure we can, if you come to PEI and live here, I want to make sure you have the best chance to be successful, to have a good life. And those things include housing, access to healthcare, and access to education and other things. So really, really complicated issues that everybody has an opinion on out there and says, you should be doing this, and you should be doing that. But there's never, I can promise you, there's never one simple solution to these complex challenges, for sure.
Absolutely, and I mean, with the topic of healthcare,
that's not controversial at all.
No,
so.
not at all. You guys had the initiative to add 16 more patient medical homes across Prince Edward Island by the end of 2024, and with the goal of attaching every islander on the island's registry to a medical home within the next 24 months. How do you actually anticipate these homes will these developments will enhance healthcare accessibility and patient care in PEI? And are there any successes of the patient medical homes so far that you could touch on?
Yeah, I think there are many. Right now we have 16 that are set up in various stages. So 7, I believe, of those 16 are at about 90% capacity. So they're the ones that will be able now to offload patients from the registry onto and begin to add to the overall patient number at these patient medical homes. So in Kinloch, for example, there's like 6 family doctors, there's a couple of nurse practitioners, there's a couple of RNs, there's a whole fleet of services there where you can walk in, and where your journey used to start at your family doctor's office, your journey now starts, you walk in there, and maybe you will be into that medical home 4 times and never see the family doctor because you didn't need to. So the whole idea is to try to improve the access to care for islanders and to make it as simple as possible for them to access that care. And on a funny note, that we've learned over the last number of months that all of the family doctors that we have recruited in the last 18 months to PEI, every one of them are working in a patient medical home because they're choosing to come to PEI because we have this system of patient delivery set up. It's a collaborative style of healthcare delivery where, say, they can lean on each other, they can help each other to deal with you and me, the patient. So I think it's a really good initiative that people in the system want to work within that system. People accessing the system have talked glowingly about being able to go in and see directly who they need a little bit more quickly and efficiently. But we still have a lot of people on the patient registry, so the sooner we can get those people off the registry attached to a medical home, the better. 24 months, we knew when we made that commitment, it's a very ambitious commitment. I've never been afraid to be ambitious, to be bold, to set bold targets, because I believe if you don't set a target, you'll never get there. So if that becomes 25 months and we get it done, fine. But my goal all along has been to work as fast as we can to make sure everybody has access to care as close to home as possible. And, part of the other discussion around the medical school, you probably heard a lot of talk about the medical school lately, and you've been studying that. But the medical school isn't just to train family doctors. They're increasing the nursing space for RNs at UPEI, and there will be a 10,000 patient medical home on the campus of UPEI. So this is much bigger than just a medical school, which is a big component of it. But those are our long-term goals, and that'll be a hope. That patient medical home will be the gold star that you walk into. But we have many gold stars. Kinloch, the one we have at South Shore in Crapo is a really, really impressive unit that the community has worked together on. And so But lots of challenges in healthcare for sure.
And you kind of touched on like the physician recruitment aspect of that too, and I know that like you also mentioned the medical school, which is something that your government's been doing. But we just actually had an episode with Dr. Herb Dickinson.
Oh yes.
And he really emphasized on how there's a significant recruitment aspect to the medical school as well, because yes, the doctors there that are actually teaching, they also have an aspect of them that they practice as well. But there's some physicians that look for that, and when they're choosing where to go practice and where to go teach, they seek that. So there's also going to be the recruitment aspect through the medical school too, which I find really interesting.
Yeah, well, just before you come in here, I was delayed. We were in a meeting with our recruiting and retention team, and one of the things that we talked about was the interest that they're gauging now from family physicians across the country who are really excited that we're having a medical school here, and they're able to, to come here to continue to teach a little bit, to continue to practice, and to have that balance is something they're excited about. But let me give you a little breaking news nugget that you can break the news that the other media haven't been able to crack on this. But quite honestly, when I was in the media way back, I used to cover the legislature in 1996 and beyond. I actually interviewed for a job to go work in Herb Dickinson's office.
Really?
The leader of the NDP, and he didn't hire me. So I'm trying to think how much different my life would have been, or how much different that party could have turned out. I don't know. But Herb didn't hire me for the job, and but I enjoyed Herb, watching him in the legislature. I enjoyed the way he conducted himself and the level of debate he brought there, and I felt I wanted to connect myself to him. So it tells you a little bit about my politics, but and sometimes things work out maybe for a reason. I don't know, but
Wasn't time.
I don't know if I hit a soft spot there when I brought up his name, but if I did, I apologize.
I know. Listen, I think the world of Herb, and look, I to give full credit. I came into government and met with the University of Prince Edward Island and told them that I would be glad to support their medical school. But this was a concept that was dreamt up by others, and certainly was trumpeted and promoted by people like Herb Dickinson long before people like me came on the scene. So those are the people who deserve the credit for what this will become, and I hope they're recognized for it as such, because it was it was a bold vision that he had a long time ago, and when he started talking about it, it wasn't very popular. So good for him. Yeah.
It certainly will be an incredible thing, and I know it's receiving a lot of positive comments, especially from, there was a health and wellness standing committee with Dr. Trevor Jane, a few weeks back now, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, and he was really emphasizing on the point that, like, wherever medical schools have been built in Canada, they never get torn down. They've always been successful. They always generate enough traction to keep going, and it's never at any point where the government's like, oh, we're going to remove funding from this, because they do work with the two main issues that we're seeing, which is physician retainment and recruitment.
Well, and when you look at it from certainly from my perspective, everyone keeps telling me we need more doctors. They're really hard to recruit. So what would be the harm in us trying to train more here, particularly from here? And I don't know what your futures hold, but I mean, it's an alarming stat that Prince Edward Island students are significantly disadvantaged to get into medical school, because we're one of the only places that doesn't have a medical school of their own. So the chances of an Islander getting in to a medical school right now is far less than it is for any other medical student potentially in any other part of the country. So I don't think that's fair to you. I don't think that's fair to the generations that come. And we are living in a time of, if you follow Trump and you follow some of these things, where society is becoming very jurisdictional and very protectionist.
Yes.
And if we don't take some control of our own destiny here, start to train some of our own students here, the days of us relying on Nova Scotia and Newfoundland to do it for us, sadly, are probably becoming days of the past. So we have to deal with the realities that we face here, take a little bit of control of our own destiny. And you guys are from Summerside. Summerside is very famous for having a can-do attitude.
Yep.
Every time someone tells you can't do something, you just look them in the face and you do it.
Yep.
That's what I'd like to see everyone across PEI adopt. And that's the philosophy I'm taking as I work with UPEI in this medical school, is the only things that are impossible to do are the things that haven't been done. So.
Yep.
I kind of have a question following that. It was proposed in this mandate to increase the George Coles bursary to $3,500 annually,
Mhm.
and along branching that out to off islands for students to take the LPNs and RN courses. Is that still a plan with the PC government?
Well, it's as you know, the provincial legislature, I guess, spring session will start next week, and it will be followed very quickly by the introduction of the latest provincial budget. And I wouldn't want to steal all of the thunder of Minister Jill Burridge, who's working very hard to deliver this, but I think it would be safe to say you should keep your ears open on the budget address that will highlight just exactly what we're talking about. Trying to make it more affordable for Islanders to go to school in Prince Edward Island, but also trying to make sure that bursary extends out of province for those services that we can't offer within the province, or those areas that we need extra focus on to deal with some of the challenges that we have. So a roundabout way of saying it was in the mandate for a reason, and now that the latest provincial budget will roll out next week, it would certainly be fair to everyone to assume.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. You guys got a lot of little nuggets here that you guys are going to what? The rest of the media is going to be following you. From here on in.
Boy.
Yeah.
To kind of follow off within like the education system, electric school buses that you guys have been implementing by the hopes of an all-electric fleet by 2030, I believe. This sort of initiative is like very good promise for a greener future of the island, and maybe kind of considering this shift towards more sustainability. Are there plans to extend like similar environmentally friendly measures beyond school transportation, like maybe even just like electric shuttles into everyday life, or like other strategies or initiatives, anything like that?
Yeah, well, we talk quite often with Mike Cassidy, for example, with his business, who he provides transit throughout PEI and partners with the municipalities, partners with us, and he has a long-term plan to green his bus fleet as well, which would be great. Some of the technology is in very early stages and continues to improve on a very regular basis, and I think will continue to improve because that's where society is taking us. I think people want to have a cleaner environment. But when I talk to Minister Myers, who's been a real leader in this, he has grand plans for the future of PEI, and there's also the possible use of our school buses to actually offload some of the pressure on our power grid by using our buses at a time when they're not in use to actually put energy back into the market. So there's so many tentacles of this, along with just greening, taking a diesel bus and turning it into green. My overall goal when I started this, and how we convinced the federal government to help support us in this, is we haven't gotten there, but I still think there's a way for us in underserved communities, particularly rural communities, to use our electric bus fleet when they're not taking students to and from school, to connect communities to the main line bus routes across PEI. So I grew up in the eastern part of the province, so I would use an example of in Murray River. So the school bus driver from Murray River would take the kids to school, pick them up, but in the meantime, there's 4 or 5 hours in the middle where they could be taking people from the community to Montague to shop or to connect with the transit line to take them to other places around. And I think that would be a real unique use of our bus fleet in the long term. But I think Islanders want this. I think Islanders, we live in an island province, so we know climate change. We feel it and see it every day. And Islanders like to be on the cutting edge of this, and it's a very neat way to travel. I have a hybrid vehicle. It's great to drive your vehicle, and there's no motor making a sound. It's kind of very peaceful and nice, and then you're doing a little part for the environment. And I think students enjoy the experience. I think it's a win-win for all of us. And as I say, if there's utilizations to it to help load balance and do other things, they can also serve as emergency charging stations if the power goes out. Like, there's lots of things that we could be doing from a community basis that would be part of the long-term goal of this. And but yeah, it's a noble goal we have, and we're working toward it, and I'm proud to be doing it.
Yeah. Very, very nice, very nice.
Yeah, and that kind of contributes to the whole goal of net zero too in our province and trying to eliminate our carbon emissions as well too. And I really like the point that you brought up, where you're utilizing them during those off hours. I think that could be really beneficial.
Well, I think so, and it like this is a difficult province to have, public transit going to every little community, because there's not a great business case to do it in a lot of areas. But if you have the energy, you don't need fuel in the rigs. We probably need to provide more full-time work for our bus drivers, because bus drivers in general have been hard to recruit and hard to retain because it's a part-time position. So maybe the way to do this is to keep them working full-time, driving people back and forth to small communities. But we also do our heat pump program, so that's another way of taking furnace oil and diesel oil out of the way that are high emitting fuels, and allowing islanders to heat their homes with electric heat, which is much more sustainable. And our electricity is 95% green from it's hydro from Quebec, or hydro from Newfoundland, or we also have the Point Lepreau plant, which is so we're getting clean energy, and to allow islanders to use this in a more efficient way is helping a lot of islanders. And I think we've given out 5,000 now, Emily, maybe a little bit more, 6,000 free heat pumps to islanders all across the board.
Incredible.
Wow,
And-
that's amazing.
And we aren't stopping. We're keeping going. Yeah, we're keeping going. We're going to do hot water heaters too. We're going to make we're going to make hot water heaters electric instead of being.
That's
utilized
amazing.
by-
That's amazing. Yeah.
Now,
That just happened today too. So that's that,
Oh, okay.
yeah, maybe edit that. That's not. Maybe that hasn't happened yet.
That's just
Alright.
for us.
That's our goal. That's just for this crew.
All
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not actually entirely. I don't really know. But were the school buses utilized during the tourism season at all? And if they weren't, is this something that we could
I
use?
think I saw.
Like,
I
I
did
don't
see
know.
a few around.
I think we might have used a couple around
Yeah.
Cavendish Beach, for example, helping to go back and forth there. But we also have been working with the transit company to create routes out to Cavendish and back, and trying to make that a little bit. You've heard of our Toonie Transit, where you can jump on the bus for $2, which is a great piece of business for islanders. But look, there's probably better opportunities to utilize them, and I think you'll see more utilization in the future with that. But it's say some of the technology is in its very infant stages, and sometimes the buses need a little bit of work. We probably read a little bit about that, where some bus drivers are saying, "Oh, we should go back to the diesel." And I follow history. I remember when they first started talking about cars here in PEI, they were worrying about what we're going to do with horses. But we still have horses here, and I don't think anyone want to go back to that. So society moves forward,
It's hard to introduce change sometimes. Yeah.
especially here.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I had a question just
Sure.
just on COVID. I mean, obviously we're familiar with COVID.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
It's it's almost a pandemic once every 100 years.
Yeah.
And my grandfather lost two brothers in 3 days during the 1919, and it tended to go after the younger generation. This one was completely different, and I think PI certainly did a wonderful job in terms of, but it did consume a lot of your time.
Sure did.
It's almost like 2 years, and I'm looking at, like, in any comparison, have you ever had a chance to kind of reflect and say, oh my God, like, what did they do in 1918 versus 2020, and how do we do it differently? And we seem to do a fantastic job.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and Islanders have said that to me time and again. Look, I quickly followed behind Dr. Morrison, who was on top of it right from the start, who always provided the best information that we had, and we made our decisions based on the research and the data. We didn't get involved politically. I think you've seen other jurisdictions where after a certain amount of time, politicians said, oh, the heck with the health component. We didn't really do that. We followed along. So, she's brilliant. She's caring, compassionate. She did so it was easy to follow behind. I think I talked to her a little bit from time to time, and we go down, we have a lot of PTSD around COVID, but sometimes if we go down memory lane, we talk about things like Well, in 1919, they didn't have to go on and do 2 briefings every day online, and they didn't have the the keyboard warriors on there talking. Maybe there were some experts out there at home, but they kept their thoughts to themselves in 1919. So that that's just things we kind of joke about. But it was a very, very difficult time. I think if I looked at it quite honestly, it was the hardest time of my life because there were so many unknowns, there was so much fear, and I really tried to use my time to, even if I didn't have the answers, to try to validate to Islanders that we're going to be fine, we will get through this, we'll methodically make our way through this. It introduced me probably to the homes of Prince Edward Island on a regular basis, more so maybe than any premier in history. Because there was really not much else to do, certainly in the early days of COVID. And we would have, several thousand Islanders tuned into these things. Yeah. But I really just tried to use that time to reassure Islanders, to let them know that we're trying to make the best decisions that we can. And I'm a firm believer, having grown up here and lived here for most of my life, that Islanders can handle the truth. If you tell them the truth, they may not like it sometimes, but they'll always appreciate the truth. Be open, be honest, be upfront with them. And I think we did that every day. We didn't get everything right. When we had to, we closed the liquor stores and quickly realized we needed to open the liquor stores. And but I mean, every decision you make, you have the ability to change, and we were doing that in real time. And I thought we did a great job. I mean, the people working on the front lines did a great job. Like, all Islanders seem to have bought in on COVID, and but it's hard to think about it now. Like, when we think today, we're going to wake up tomorrow and close the bridge. No one's allowed to go outside their house. Like, that seems like such a, drastic thing, but I mean, that's what we were faced with, and we took it on to the best we can, and we didn't know what we didn't know, but we just like we promised, we got through it.
Yeah. Very great.
Yeah, and I mean, even now, having lived through that experience, even if I woke up tomorrow and said, okay, the bridge is closed, you're not allowed to leave your home, it still would kind of feel kind of surreal to me.
It sure would.
Yeah, but
not much fun to do.
No.
As a premier, the last thing you want to do is not tell anyone they can't come to PEI and tell everyone they should stay in their house. Yeah. That's not a great re-election plan.
Yeah, before I kind of transition to my next question as well, because it doesn't really relate to what we were just talking about. I don't want to bring up any more PTSD, but it was very commendable what you did. I know, regardless of what any of the keyboard warriors were going on about, is what you referred to them as, it was. I know myself and a lot of other people that I've spoke to were very impressed with what you and your government did during the time, and it's again, very commendable.
Thank you. That's nice to say.
The recent partnership with the National Hockey League, naming Tourism Prince Edward Island as the official travel destination partner, kind of represents a significant opportunity for the island. How do you foresee this partnership benefiting PEI's tourism sector and its broader community, and what expected positive impacts for the island's visibility and economy do you foresee? Yeah,
well, I mean, the Tourism PEI, through their partnership with a variety of tourism organizations across the province, and through their network of tourism operators, have really developed a strategy that they want to guide themselves going forward to sort of grow and promote tourism in the province. So for years we've done a really, really good job of bringing people to PEI. I mean, we always have generally about 1.6, 1.7 million people that come to PEI every year, and it's a big part of our tourism, and our economy. So, tourism probably generates, $85 million in direct revenue to our budget each year, and there'd be, probably a little higher number if you did some of the spin-offs. But so the approach that the industry is trying to take, and Tourism PEI is trying to develop here, is not that we need more people to come, but what can we do to extend the stay of those people who are coming, and what can we do to increase the spend of those people who are coming here. So maybe that means we need to bring in people who have a higher capability to spend, for example. So we're always looking for partners to try to connect with their networks to. And when we first started talking to the National Hockey League about being a partner, we looked at it, never mind that I love hockey or someone else might love hockey. It's about what can they bring to us from a brand awareness perspective? How can we cling on to their brand to connect with people in key areas that we need who can come to PEI and do just like I talked about? So our focus with the NHL is on Ontario, Quebec, and northeastern US, which is a big part of our tourism branding product. That's where the bulk of our people come each year to PEI from. And it's to try to connect with a different level of individual potential tourists who can come here and have a good experience. And I'm excited because the NHL has recognized PEI as a great partner to do business with, and that's a feather in our cap right off the bat. The big brands like the NHL or any big corporate brands don't lend themselves to other brands easily. There's a process they go through, and for them to feel like PEI is a really good, strong partner is a feather in our cap from a tourism perspective. But there's also other things connected to this. So we went to Boston and we kind of took over the rink, for example, at a Boston Bruins game. So we talked about PEI being the tourism destination of the NHL, but we have fiddlers, we have oysters, we have mussels, and we're creating this good impression of PEI and connecting with people. I got a text last night from one of our mussel producers here who tells me that someone who's connected to him in Boston was at the game last night. They saw what we were doing, and they booked a weekend golf tournament in the fall in PEI. They're going to golf Andersons Creek, Green Gables, and Crowbush. So that's exactly, a small little sample of what we're trying to do with this. The other part of it is the NHL has many different partners, corporate partners like Visa, go through them all of the big brand companies. So a number of their entities and partners will come to PEI and have their corporate meetings here. So that'll be 200 and 300 and 400 individuals who will come here from various levels, various places across North America who will come here and have a positive experience in PEI, which we then think they can share with their partners along the way. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. It's $2.5 million of taxpayers' money, so we're trying to generate from that a greater spend. So I talk about PEI having $85 million in direct spend. We would like our industry to grow to $110, $120, $130 million in tourism revenue and impact, because that's the money we take to spend. We rebuild houses and we invest in our social programs. We buy electric buses or whatever it is. That's the money we have to do this. So that's the overall goal of this. I think it's a very creative way. I've gotten calls from other premiers who were very envious and jealous that we were able to pull this off. And who knows where it leads? I mean, there was talk a few years ago, just to take it all full circle, when we were in the COVID bubble, the NHL was looking for a place to have their Stanley Cup playoffs. They ended up doing it I think it was in Edmonton and other places. But we kind of reached out and said, why don't you do that in PEI in New Brunswick? It never really got that far, but it was a kind of a unique idea. And then, we reached out before and talked about where we'd like to host the NHL Awards here in PEI. Sure, we're not Nashville, we're not Las Vegas, but we could do something really unique and interesting here. So whether that ever comes of this, I don't know. But I think if we make a positive connection with the National Hockey League, and they have a good experience here, and it works for them and it works for us, and we show them what we're capable of doing, maybe they're more open to a presentation and opportunity to do something like that, or one of their many other entities that they have. It's exciting, it's unique, and I think Islanders should be proud of it. It's a really, 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 really cool thing, and I think it's going to pay off dividends for years to come.
That's amazing. Wow, that's so cool. Yeah. To sort of almost wrap it up here, I think we have about 2 questions left for you.
Yeah.
We wanted to emphasize all 4 of us being in our high school year here. All 4 of us being in our high school year here.
Yeah.
Well, I say 4 of us.
Yeah. Well,
He's
I'm a second time around.
yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
He's never going to grow up now. He's not going to start now.
We wanted to hear maybe some of your thoughts on the importance of shaping the next generation, and especially engaging young people in politics to get them interested. And it's obviously essential for thriving democracy. And with that in mind, do you happen to have any specific strategies or initiatives that you believe could maybe effectively encourage or empower youth to begin their journey?
Yeah, look, I think it's if you talk to anyone who's been around politics and political parties, the the white whale continues to be, how do we engage people your age, right? And what tends to happen, now that I'm one of these over 50 gray hairs, what tends to happen is, oh, why don't we get them hooked up on this little thing there and phone them and all this stuff. So we need to have more people like you involved in the grassroots of these things, because you know how to interact. To me, this is as foreign to me as landing on the moon, this stuff you're doing here, but it's second nature for you. So it's a great opportunity for me to be introduced to a group of people who probably might know me as Cal's dad in the rink or Cal's dad at the ball field, but they don't really know who I am or what I do. So anytime I can do something like this, I will. I think that, I think you talked to Mr. Trainer about the civics class that you're taking now, and I think, I still look, even though I don't look like it in the mirror, I look at myself as if I'm your age, and I remember being in Montague High School, and Gilbert Clements was the environment minister when I was there, and he had an assembly talking about the environment when no one even really knew. Well, acid rain was the only thing we ever talked about in the environment. But I remember just being captivated by his appearance, by what he had to say, by the way he interacted with people. And I knew, even though I didn't know maybe what he was talking about specifically, I knew it was important. I knew it was important for me to try to understand it. And I think many of my fellow students felt that way. But there's lots of things that go on in your life that are way more important than what is the recruitment and retention strategy for Health PEI, for example. But all of these things that we do, all of these things that I do matter to you, even if you don't know it, they matter into the future. And the more, more impact you can have, the more role you can play. And don't let it be guided too much by the color of politics. Just find something that you're passionate about, and I promise you, if you're passionate about it, somebody else is. And if you have a passion to share something, there's always a set of ears there to listen to it, and you can make a big difference. This stuff here will, believe it or not, will make a difference to somebody along the way, and maybe one of you in a few years' time will be the premier, and you can remember coming back. But that's how it kind of works, But politics doesn't have to be this boring, stodgy old political debate that it has kind of turned into. This is about shaping our life today to make it better for tomorrow, and everyone should have a role in that. And I'd encourage you to stay at it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's a few things that I kind of want to highlight off Campbell's question, if time allows.
Sure.
But
I don't have anywhere to go, so I can stay here all night.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, kind of where this actually initiated from was Rotary Youth Parliament. We went and we got extremely engaged with like-minded individuals who were like, "This is absolutely fantastic." Everyone there was on the same page with stuff. We were just happy to be there and talk about issues that are going on in our community that we foresee, and that's kind of how this happened too, and like something as simple as that is great for for community engagement. And what we found is through our podcast, we also wanted to not only discuss the issues but also provide solutions to our community. So it actually led to us forming a youth council with Mayor Dan Kutcher. But I know before COVID, and it kind of lost traction as COVID happened, which is completely understandable because, again, as we highlighted earlier, it was a significant time. There was a Premier's Council.
Yes, a youth council, that's right.
Yeah. Do you foresee this coming back in the future at all?
Yeah, well, as a matter of fact, I talked to my chief of staff and my principal secretary here, usually start our day in here sitting in the chairs you're in and sort of talking about not just the issues of the day, but, sort of what we need to be focused on. And one of the things we often do is go back and say, we used to do this, or we used to do that. And, I enjoyed the Premier's Youth Council because I had a couple of really good discussions with people who I think when they started the conversation with me thought they were going to be the polar opposite of my political view or whatever, and I was just engaged with them very much, and we at the end of the day we kind of shared the same principles even if we didn't agree on the path forward. But I really enjoy that debate, and what's refreshing to me is that because you're young, you don't have the life experience that others have, and you don't have the preconceived positions of things. So you just kind of look at it through a set of fresh eyes and say, why don't we do this? And the importance of something like that can't be understated, because so much we do in government and so much we do in life is because we've always done it that way. And for someone to have the sight or the foresight or the wherewithal to say, why do we do it that way? Or why don't we do it? That's how you change the world. I said, that's as simple as I could explain it to you. So to have the fresh eyes, the fresh perspective, the one that's not sort of beaten down by, endless debates about positions and someone has to take this position because the person before them believed that and they have to continue on. And we all bring this, as you get older, you bring your learned experience, which is good, bad, and indifferent, to the table, and that influences what you do. But what I always liked about that Premier's Youth Table is that there was a freshness to it, and there was an energy, and there was a belief that PEI can do whatever we want to do. And I think the longer we can go with that attitude, the much better we will do. And life will beat you down. I mean, that's just the reality, and life changes you, and you learn and have different perspectives. But the longer you can keep that fresh perspective, the better. And so, yeah, a roundabout way to say I'd like to get that re-engaged and to put it to good use. And I think that, we talked in the legislature about 16-year-olds voting and all that. And I don't know if it ever really got a really full, thorough debate about the benefits of it. It kind of just became, they'll vote in a couple of years, or it became a bunch of grumpy old men saying, we're not going to do this. But there's probably an opportunity to have conversations like that at a level that can bring some really good perspective to many of these issues. And so,
I think we'll wrap it up with our final question. After you've served as the Premier of Prince Edward Island and lead politics, what would you like your legacy to be?
I don't know. I think people ask me that now. I think the longer you get into the business, I think it's a polite way of Prince Edward Islanders say you should start to look to the door. But I don't know. People ask me that. I don't know. I've never given it any thought. Generally I would say, I would hope people would say that he talked about changing politics when he got into politics, and he actually did it. He actually changed the way we do business and the way we conduct business, and he dialed down the partisan nature of politics in a way that probably people didn't think he was serious about. I hope they can say that. I'll probably be known as the COVID Premier because I was living through COVID.
That's how it goes.
And that's how it goes. But I quite honestly, I don't really think about it. I mean, when I'm dead and gone, will my family be proud, and the generations to come say that was my grandfather or something? That'll be great. And I hope what they can say was he was the 33rd Premier of PEI. He didn't get the best hand to play, but he played it the best that he could, and he tried to deliver the best he can. And he stayed true to himself and his beliefs. And I suppose if we can do that, then that's probably the greatest badge of honor, we could have. But my legacy, I don't know. I mean, I'd be honored if someone 50 years from even knew who the heck I was. It'd be great, So
Here's an idea.
Yeah.
Maybe if you can go back into storytelling, you've got a real good story to tell.
Yes. Well, I'm compiling good stories here, and I'm itching to tell them. And don't get me wrong, but no, you know what? It's this introduces you to people, which is, what I love about PEI is our people. And as a journalist or whatever I did in life, I've always been connected to people, and it's been, it's a great thing. And people tell you the most interesting things about themselves, and so some of them will make good stories, but some of them also help make good policy and government. And but it's a great treat. People, whether or not they voted for you, I think generally people in Prince Edward Island always will say they want their Premier to do well. If the Premier's doing well, the province is doing well, and that's how they. I hear a lot of I'll tell you this, that a lot of people stop if I'm out with my wife for supper. People say, "You're doing a great job," and I'm a Liberal. So I think that's their way of saying, now I didn't vote for you, and I'm never going to vote for you. But and this is, it's almost like it's a greater way of saying how good a job they think I'm doing, because normally they wouldn't even say it. They wouldn't even be able to say it, but they kind of qualify it by saying, and I'm a Liberal. And I think by saying that, it's their way of communicating to you that they genuinely think you're doing a good job, and they're kind of cheering for you. And
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Does anybody come up to you and say, what's your favorite band? Normally we run into the premier and say, oh my God, we got a problem. Right? We got to tell them what our views are. And or what's your view on this? What's your view on that? But never. I said I can recall one time actually having breakfast with former Prime Minister Trudeau, and there were 15 of us invited, and he said, the only difference between me and you is that I'm Prime Minister of this country and you're not.
Yeah.
But he said, no one ever asked me what my favorite car is, my favorite hockey team, my favorite.
No, it's true. People, the general comment I get more often than not is if I see somebody, if I'm at Maid Marian's or something, just, people will say, how are you? I say, good. And they go, I wouldn't want your job. And I go, well, every job's tough, or whatever. No, I wouldn't want your job, and so that's the general comment. But, people are more than you would think start off the conversation by saying, how are you doing?
Yeah.
I think that's the islandness in this, if that's a word.
Yeah.
They really genuinely want to know that you're doing well. They're very open to share their challenges and problems and solutions. And look, Doug Ford wouldn't have the same interaction with people that I would. Doug Ford's would probably be more of, hey, I love you, or hey, I hate you. And here in PEI, it's more of, did you ever try this with the doctors? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did you ever tell them that we have a nice beach? And I go, yeah, we tell them that too. Yeah.
But making connections with Islanders and with voters
Yeah.
is a secret to being able to connect with people, right?
I think, but I quite honestly view it as just, it's what I've always done. Like I'm curious by nature. I guess that made me go towards journalism. I'm just curious by nature. So I want to know about you. I want to know what makes you you. And so I have and I inherited kind of my dad's ability to interact. Like he used to say, princes and paupers. He was as comfortable talking to Joe Giz as he was to talking to the commissioner, and that's kind of the way I am. I'm just, people think the premier's job is something special, and it is, but I'm just a young guy from Georgetown royalty who ended up in the chair. He didn't really design a path to get here. He kind of ended up here. He's trying to do the best he can, but I'm Island through and through. I want to be, a good Islander. I want people to be kind and nice to each other, and I like people, even if some of them don't like me every day. I work hard for them and try to do the best I can for them. So.
Yeah, I can think of no better comment than to leave it off at that.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Well, listen, thanks. This
Yeah.
is awesome. You guys keep up the good work. This is pretty impressive.
Yeah,
So.
I just want to say thank you
Yeah.
for both your time and also your administrative staff. They've been
Yeah.
very accommodating to
Thank you
us.
as well.
Like,
Yeah.
very, very, very accommodating to us, which again, we're not really used to being our first
Yeah.
on the road episode. But thank you for your time.
Oh, this is a big team in here, and look, sometimes I'm the face of it, but there's so much that goes on behind the scenes, as you see. So you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. So I got good people. Yeah. Thanks a lot,
Thank
Lo.
you.
This is awesome, and
Thank you so
thanks
much.
Three Oaks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
All right.
Yep.
Awesome.